There have been a lot of things that frankly have been very troubling, very disconcerting, very concerning for me in stupid America in the post 9/11 world. A lot of things I feel like in this country have changed and changed for the worse since that day of September the 11th, 2001. Now, this video is not to talk about September the 11th, 2001. That will be another video this month in this Stupid America series. This is more so to talk about some of the things that happened as a direct result of 9/11 and what was allowed to happen by our government and more importantly by the citizens, by the people of this supposedly great and proud, fantastic nation that really just bother me to no end. You know, in the post 9/11 world, and even to this day, there is this overwhelming nationalistic type of propaganda, this very kind of pro-military type of propaganda that you see all over the place. Like I even saw it in the NBA Finals. When do I ever remember them playing the Star Spangled Banner for every single game of the NBA Finals? I used to maybe remember sometimes they would do the pre-game introductions, the player introductions, and maybe for one or two games of the series they might show it. I don't remember now. I might be remembering wrong, but it seems like this is something that is ratcheted up over the past 12 plus years. You know, as we are going after the terrorizers, we are going after the evildoers and fighting terrorism around the world and combating global terrorism with the United States global war on terror. I have seen a lot of things that really bother me. You know, trampling on constitutional rights and the erosions of our civil liberties as United States citizens via the Patriot Act, another topic during this Stupid America series coming up this month, and so many other things. But perhaps the most concerning thing to me that you especially saw play out in the first 5 to 7 years of the post 9/11 America was that to question anything was to be viewed as being almost traitorous, as being unpatriotic. Never mind the fact that Thomas Jefferson once said that dissension is the greatest form of patriotism. To question a war, to question our tactics, to question anything and everything pertaining to the military and the industrial military complex and our propensity for spending ourselves into oblivion through fighting 2 foreign wars and doing all of this has created this huge schmoz of a fuck that we are in as a country in 2014. To question any of those things was unpatriotic, and by a lot of people still viewed to be as unpatriotic. And perhaps the most ridiculous portion or form of propaganda to come out of the post-11 world, 9/11 world, is that no matter what you think and no matter what you say, you have to support the troops and you have to support what they do. And they fight for your freedoms and help make this the greatest country in the world. Now, a lot of people might believe in this hot garbage, and a lot of people might sit there and buy into this bullshit, but I don't. Excuse the hell out of me, but opposing a war is not failing to support the troops. Sitting there and being adverse to a war, knowing that we are going into places ill-equipped and ill-prepared to deal with the challenges and circumstances and situations that we will face there and that our troops will face there. Questioning those things is not patriotic. Newsflash to all the dumb dick people that think that your politicians, in order to be patriotic, in order to be American, to actually support the troops, have to sit there and wear a stupid American flag lapel pin on their freaking lapels. You are morons. These are the same crooks that have sold out your country, sold out your kids, your grandkids, and your own futures to big business, big oil corporations, and international banking conglomerates. But as long as you wear the American flag lapel pin, that means you're patriotic. And I resent this whole notion that everything always comes back to, instead of being able to criticize this or instead of being able to question that, well, you can't do that because then you're doing it and you're questioning the troops. And you don't want to sit there and be known as somebody that doesn't support the troops, right? You don't want to sit there and be against the troops, right? I don't know how it happened. I don't know how they pulled it off, but people like George Bush and the neocons like the crooks like Cheney and Rumsfeld, the Ashcrofts, the war criminals like them, the Condoleezza Rices, even the Colin Powells, were able to perpetuate this hot garbage of propaganda that the state-run, corporate-owned media, regardless of size or affiliation or agenda, all bought into over the past 12 plus years to create this type of environment where to question anything about a war and anything that our soldiers do in a war is unpatriotic and means that you don't support the troops. And that no matter what, we should bend over backwards for our troops. That we should support them because they are fighting for our freedoms and our liberties, and they are what make our great country so great. Let's have a little bit of a reality check here. First of all of this focus on Islamophobia and all of this focus on trying to paint a certain group of people in a very hateful way has taken the eye off of the ball of the fact that the majority of terrorist acts in this country and around the world are performed by non-Muslim people, by non-Arabic people. These are indisputable facts. But because we can sensationalize this in our media, because we can evoke real fears and emotions and passions out of the citizens to where they become mindless sheep and they follow and believe whatever the hell you say. See what happened in the first couple of years in the post-9/11 world. You could sit there and set your own narrative. You know, when we talk about this whole thing of, well, the troops are fighting for your rights and they are fighting for your freedoms. How are they fighting for my right and how are they fighting for my freedom in this day and age by occupying countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, in particular in Iraq, that did not have weapons of mass destruction? Do we need to forget this? A country that we have been over there for years and frankly probably created more problems due to our involvement and our consistent presence there than what was there when Saddam Hussein was actually in charge. Now, a lot of people are going to sit there and tell me this is blasphemy. And a lot of people are going to sit there and tell me that this is unpatriotic. No, it's not. This is logical. This is realistic. How are these troops fighting for my rights, for my freedoms, when my freaking Congress, my presidents, my United States government are sitting there and eroding my liberties, eroding my civil rights, and taking away my basic freedoms? Free speech zones, warrantless wiretaps, warrantless searches, being able to potentially hold citizens as enemy combatants without having to sit there and give them the full due process afforded under law, waterboarding, enhanced interrogation methods, i.e. torture. I could go on and on and on and on. If these troops were really fighting for my freedoms today, and if these troops were really fighting to protect me from evil in the world, then why the hell are they in Iraq or Afghanistan? Why aren't they here fighting our own government? Why aren't they here fighting some of our own people? Why aren't they here fighting big oil and the big corporations and the international banks? Who's the real enemies here? And as far as this whole thing of, you're supposed to feel bad for the troops or sorry for the troops in terms of what they put up with. And this might sound crass and I might sound like an ass, but that's just too fucking bad. I have a lot of trouble feeling sympathy for people that chose to do what they did. They didn't mind getting all the admiration and love when people said, oh, you chose to do it. That's great. We respect you. We support you. And we salute you. It's not like service in Iraq or Afghanistan was forced. It was not like this is a situation like World War I or World War II or Korea or Vietnam where there was a freaking draft. Ultimately, this is an entirely volunteer force, an entirely volunteer army. They chose to do it, knowing what could potentially happen. So I see all these so-called goodwill and good feeling stories about, oh, they were gone away from their families all this time. They chose to do it. Why are we feeling bad for somebody that conscientiously had a choice to make and made a certain choice for whatever their reasons might be? I refuse to sit there and buy into that sanctimonious bullshit. I'm sorry, I do. Now, I'm sure I've already pissed off a lot of you, but I don't really care. Now I get to the real heart of the matter, though. For all the people that sit there and say, how dare you say that, Jeff? How dare you say that, Jeff? How dare you say this, Jeff? Well, I say, how dare fucking you? What does it really mean to support the troops to begin with? Because the definition that we have received here in stupid America and have been allowed to have pounded down our throats through this pro-neocon propaganda over the past decade plus is entirely divergent, in my opinion, from what actually supporting the troops really means. Is it supporting the troops to sit there and send them off to Afghanistan and Iraq, ill-equipped with the proper armor and equipment and training necessary in order to be able to survive in a godforsaken land that they have no place in? Or is supporting the troops being something like what I said, is that we should not be going and fighting over in Afghanistan. We should not be going to fight over in Iraq. These are not the issues. These are not the problems that we think that they are. Furthermore, how dare we sit there and put these young men and women that have chosen to potentially put their lives on the line for this country, for whatever reason that may be, and we sit there and we don't prepare them and properly equip them with the training and armor and equipment that they need to be able to come back home to their loved ones, their friends, their families, what have you. Who's supporting the troops here? The one that's sending ill-equipped soldiers over to fucking die in godforsaken lands? Or the ones like me that sat there and maybe didn't want to send them over in the first place and furthermore said, we better not send them over if they're not properly equipped to do what they need to do to ensure that they are able to come back home? Who supports the troops? Is it the people that sit there and send the troops over there and keep them over there in extended tours and find loopholes to keep them over there time after time after time, who sit there and continue to try and justify via troop surges and all this other hot garbage that we need to continue to stay in these foreign entanglements, these problems that we created for year after year? Or am I someone who actually supports the troop by saying enough is enough? We have enough problems at home. We have enough issues at home. These two godforsaken wars are bankrupting this fucking country, and they will continue to do so for years on going forward. We need to bring those troops home. How can you sit there and look yourself dead in the eye and say that one more death is justifiable in Afghanistan or one more death is justifiable in Iraq? For what? For what purpose? Who's supporting the troops? Is it the individuals that sit there and send these troops over there and then are improperly equipped to deal with the consequences, ramifications, and repercussions of what happens when these troops that have been through hell and back come back to their country? They can't get a fucking job. They can't get the proper attention, both in terms of medical, physical, psychological, that they need? Or is it the people like me that sit there and say, you know what, instead of giving all this foreign aid to this fucking country or giving foreign aid to that fucking country and taking the money out of poor people's mouths and hands, so to speak, in this country and giving it to rich people in poor countries, let's take that money instead and make sure that we are actually providing the proper necessary medical care for these troops. We're providing the proper mental health care infrastructure that they need, the physical health care that they need, both short-term and the long-term. Newsflash, people, this country has not even begun to feel the impact and the ramifications of what the Afghanistan and Iraq conflicts and wars, whatever you want to call them, have ultimately caused. We have not even begun to feel it. We have not even begun to feel the full true cost in terms of lost productivity of all these hundreds of thousands of troops that have been maimed and injured and every freaking thing else. We have not even measured the long-term cost to society yet as a country here in stupid America. I'm sorry, but the way I look at it is supporting the troops is not sitting there and putting your hand over your chest and singing the Star-Spangled Banner. Supporting the troops is not sitting there and wishing them off well or welcoming them when they come back home. Supporting the troops is not sitting there and going to their funeral and looking at their flag-draped casket. Supporting the troops is not sitting there and doing all of this BS propaganda that sounds good and then failing to actually support our troops both when they're in the field and when they come back home. To me, I view myself as actually that does support the troops. I believe that you don't send these troops off to do something that is unnecessary. You especially don't send off these troops to do something unnecessary when they are unnecessarily ill-equipped and ill-prepared to be able to do so. And then you don't sit there and mire them in this muck of a conglomeration of a fuckstick foobar situation for years on end that they have no real business being involved in. And then furthermore, you don't sit there and bring them back, and then they can't even get into the freaking VA system to be able to get seen by a doctor at a hospital. Who supports the fucking troops here? What does it really mean to support the troops? Putting a flag out in front of your house is not fucking supporting the troops. Putting a lapel pin on your stupid suit is not supporting the troops. Supporting all of these wars and trying to justify these wars and justifying the increased influence of the industrial military complex in this country, once again, is not supporting the troops. Sitting there and doing all these BS things to sit there and say, hey, look at this guy, isn't this a tender, awesome moment, again, is not supporting the troops. Supporting the troops is paying the troops for the type of work that they do and paying them what they are really worth. Supporting the troops is providing them with an opportunity to receive the long-term care that so many of them are going to need after these godforsaken conflicts and godforsaken lands that they had no business being involved with to begin with. Supporting the troops is making sure that these young men and women that are brave enough to volunteer, knowing very well that this could possibly happen. And that's the reason in 1999 I did not sign up for the military. I knew Clinton wasn't going to be around much longer. I figured a Republican might take over afterwards, and God only knows where the country was going to go from there. I was probably going to fight in a war. And ultimately, I made the right decision for me because I did not get involved in a war that we did not have any business in. I did not put my life on the line for no damn reason. All the while, we're sitting here and we're talking about how these soldiers, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for protecting our freedoms and our liberties. They're not doing any of that. They aren't. They're sitting there and being used by our government to protect certain big interests of the oil companies, of big businesses, of big banks, and that to me is criminal. That's not supporting the troops. Sitting there and saying all this feel-good crap again is not supporting the troops. You want to support your troops? Bring them fucking home. Stop sending them over there into stupid foreign engagements. Stop keeping them over there for years where they have no business being. Make sure that all of these troops, if you ever do, God forbid, actually have a legit war that ever has to be fought again, are actually properly equipped, properly trained, and properly prepared for the conflict that they are about to head into. Make sure there is a proper entrance strategy. Make sure there is a proper battle strategy. Make sure there is a proper and effective and well laid out exit strategy. And then once we send those troops over and they're maimed physically and mentally, and some of them don't come back alive, let's make sure we take care of these soldiers. Let's make sure we take care of these troops. Let's make sure we take care of their families. Stop giving foreign aid to fucking countries like Israel. Stop sitting there and selling us under the bus to this big bank. Stop doing freaking bailouts for this and that. Stop doing all of this hot garbage. How about we make sure that these troops have a VA system they can come back to that can actually provide them the quality of health care that they need to be able to get by because of all the freaking damage that they occurred for volunteering to be a part of this corrupt system and this crooked fucking military that sent them over there to die for no damn reason. A lot of you probably won't like what I just said. Well, that's tough shit. I don't care. The way I look at it from my opinion is supporting the troops is not the supporting the troops that you've been programmed to believe for so many years. It's time to bring these brave young men and women home. It's time to stop ruining families. It's time to stop ruining lives. And it's time for the U.S. to really show that it cares, for the U.S. to really show its moral superiority. And it's really time for us to step up to the plate long term, because we're going to need to, and actually support our troops. And no Star-Spangled Banner, no American flag in front of your door, and no lapel pin on your freaking collar is going to support the troops, period.